Hello again, witches, seekers, and friends, and welcome to the Fat Feminist Witch Podcast, the show where we do a little ranting, raving, and wand waving. I'm your host, Paige, and together we're going to explore magic and spirituality, social justice, the psychic realm, and most importantly, our imagination. Hey witches, and thanks for tuning in to episode 47 of the podcast, Visualization and Imagination. In today's episode, I'm talking about that totally ambiguous but vitally important word in magical practice, which is visualization. Despite it being a core part of the spell casting, magic, or manifestation process, many of us still struggle to actually do it. Like a lot of people. Some people just can't visualize, right? Wrong. So wrong. We're also going to analyze why visualization and imagination are seen as two kind of different things, with visualization being seen as a more civilized or spiritual concept. Is it really okay if your magic only happens in your imagination? And does that mean it's not real? Which, of course, is one of my favorite topics. I've got an awesome book you can read that helps you really dive into this whole idea on your own. And then just for fun, I thought we would look at some magic rocks that all come from or connect us to imaginary places in story, but that we can use in our very real magical practice. This is a topic that a lot of people ask me about, like just a lot. And I've been kind of working on an explanation or like narrowing down what it is I think or believe for kind of years. Like I've just been chipping away at it. And I'm hoping what I've got makes sense to everyone so that you can figure out or strengthen your own visualization capabilities. I think it's going to be fun. But before we get started, I just wanted to say thank you to all of you who listened to my previous episode about my bunny, Jimmy Hoppa. It was long and it was very personal and emotional. And I really was not sure anyone would listen past the first few minutes when I explained what was up. But apparently you did. So many of you actually listened to that whole episode. And a lot of you sent messages or comments, or just good vibes. And it's been so wonderful. Thank you so much. It has helped me a lot. It's really easy to feel alone after you lose a pet, because they're always here. They're always in the house. So the house gets super quiet. And it's just this weird alone feeling. But it seems like every time I start feeling like that or I feel kind of bad, I hear a little, ding, and it's and it's a notification, someone's telling me about their animal friends that they've recently lost or, just offering kind words or whatever. And it makes me feel a lot better. I couldn't reply to every message because there were a lot. And as weird as it sounds, sometimes I struggle to express emotion in the moment with an actual person. But I read every single message and comment and they all helped. They all made me feel so much better. So thank you all very much. That was really, it means a lot to me to know that I can share stuff like that on this podcast and that even sharing something that's so personal to me can, help people or entertain people or make them feel good, whatever. So today we are going to get back to the witchery and talk about magic. So one of my goals this year was to focus more on intentional magic, what I would call spell casting or rituals, rather than just, what I'd been doing for a while, which was reading a magic book or putting out a podcast episode and saying, okay, cool. That's as spiritual as I need to be today. And then, binge watching Lucifer and making some lewd remarks quite loudly. Because that's what I do. So I've been doing a lot more magic and spell casting. And I talked about it very specifically in episode 44. Guess what it was called? Spell casting. And in episode 45, I talked about working with dreams and cannabis. So we talked a little bit about, a sketchy herb and some ritual stuff you can do with dreams. And today, I am going to cut it right down to the most basic element of spellcasting, which is just you, your intention, and that marvelous brain of yours. Almost every ritual or spell you come across, whether it's in books or online, new books, old books, it doesn't matter. So many of them call for you to visualize a specific action or even the outcome for the magic to truly take hold. You need to see that you have everything that you want, or everything that you wanted out of this spell. You see yourself with it, and that makes it real. Even spells with plenty of physical items like candles and crystals and herbs, a nice big whole ritual, those will still suggest or outright say you have to fully visualize this intention of yours. For example, if you're casting a spell for courage and making, a protective amulet, it might tell you to imbue your intention into that amulet or talisman by holding it in your hands and visualizing your intention. That energy is building as a white light, and then it flows through your arms and out your hands and surrounds the object with that energy, thereby, creating the thing, making your magical object. It might even be a little specific. Imagine the light is a strong color like red or orange, just stuff like that. And that is a spell all on its own. You might see one that's just like that. The talisman's maybe lion shaped or something. And it sounds very, very simple. So you close your eyes and you focus and you breathe. And depending on who you are and how you work, you could literally see nothing. You could shut your eyes and just, blackness and those little stars. And then end up feeling like you're not capable of working magic. And that's not a fun situation. I've been there. That's like I said example, but let's be real. These are all like real anecdotes of mine. So just, So when someone tells us to visualize, we often take a bit of that word just too literally and only try to call up visual images specifically, exactly as they're described in the spell or as described by someone leading a guided meditation even, you see yourself visualize a big wood in front of you and you're walking towards the woods. And this might sound odd, like a misnomer here, but magical visualization does not actually have to be visual. And it's a shame that this doesn't get explained just a little bit more, maybe a little bit more in depth. But the truth is, not everyone is a visual person. Even some of us who are visual in our waking lives, like me, are not so when it comes to magic or even memory or dreams. I have just the most outstanding long-term memory. My short-term's pretty good, but my long-term memory is wild. It's super good. So I have very clear memories from a really long time ago, like a room in my grandparents' house from when I was 2 years old. It was a thing happening, but the room is weird because I can tell you every detail of that room. But when I close my eyes to do that, to visualize the room, it's not like I close my eyes and then I see that room like I'm holding up a picture or a movie screen. It's more just things like, well, I know the windows were on that end if I was sitting here in the couch. Or I remember wondering why the light that always came through those windows was always this like this really warm gold color. And in my head, I can't actually see the room that I'm describing. But what they had was these amazingly tacky, like harvest gold, the shades that just hang on the window permanently, very 70s. But in my mind, what I remember about that is feeling a certain way about that detail. I don't remember that the windows were covered in a gold thing. I just remember noticing that the light that came through the windows was gold. So I hope that makes sense. Even the times when I do have clear visuals that I can bring up, I've often found that the visuals in those instances are not always so legit. So, and what I've discovered is that for a lot of those, my brain realizes that there's no image file is broken in this memory. And so it tries to just fill in the blanks with other stuff that I've got in my brain. And it's things that I see all the time now that I couldn't possibly be seeing 20 years ago or scenery from movies or TV shows. It's one that's really funny is I am fairly positive that Manitoulin Island here in Ontario does not look like the plush, extremely colorful prehistoric forest from The Land Before Time, which came out the same year that we went on this trip. I'm certain it doesn't actually look like that. If it does, let me know. But I'm seeing the most Land Before Time-esque waterfall, and I just don't think that part is real. But all the other details of the memory are on. You know, we were on Manitoulin Island, and I remember the things that we were doing, and I remember what I was feeling at the time. But, you know, the visual thing seems sketchy. It just seems sketchy to me. Not so surprisingly, since I'm a book nerd, when it comes to visual memories, those really stand out. Words and letters really stick in my brain. I can see the pages of a book when I close my eyes. And if I've read it a couple times, I might even be able to read the words on that page, like in my mind. And often when I'm visualizing, the best way to kind of describe it is it seems like I'm watching a scene play out on a screen, but there's no visual. It's a black screen. But then there's subtitles at the bottom just telling me what's going on. That doesn't really sound like the description of the visualization in the spell book, right? Like, it's not like, okay, sit down and bring up a blank screen in front of your face and then have some subtitles written by a professional author that come up and describe the scene in vivid detail to you. Like, that's outrageous. Outrageous. So I was sure that, you know, I was doing it wrong or I was broken. I just can't visualize. I'm not this kind of person. Blah, 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 blah. And I, of course, had all of this anecdotal evidence to back up my belief, including, I don't know if this is related, but it's a interesting coincidence, I think. When I was 18, I decided that I wanted to experiment with psychoactive drugs, specifically stuff that causes hallucinations. I'm a cheeseball. I love the 60s and the 70s. And I guess my parents didn't pay enough attention. So I'd grown up thinking like, oh, I can't wait till I grow up and I can listen to rock and roll and I can like drop acid or whatever. So I was really interested in acid or LSD specifically. You know, I just wanted to conduct my own little electric Kool-Aid acid test. And I was just such a lame ass. Like when I say it now, I feel a little embarrassed. But that was whatever. That was my youth. It was cool. And so I wanted to try some less serious hallucinogens first, just to prepare. You know, I didn't want to break my brain. And I love research. So I did some research and I found other stuff that I could try first that wasn't going to poison me for life or anything like that. And magic mushrooms was one of the ones that was the closest to the kind of experience I would have. And it would make me hallucinate in a more chill environment that would wear off much quicker. And I definitely felt the effects of those magic mushrooms, except for the hallucinations. No hallucinations. I got confused a bit about what I had seen, but I wasn't hallucinating. My brain was moving real fast and squirrely, and I was confused. And then when I eventually did take the LSD, the same thing, no hallucinations. None. In my 20s, I did eventually hallucinate. It's a whole other story, but but now I can hallucinate if I drink a Red Bull too late at night, and most of the time they're auditory hallucinations, though. Still not super visual. So, anyways, fun coincidence. So, because of all of this kind of stuff, I wasn't really shocked about my, you know, quote unquote inability to visualize, and I think that's why for a long time I didn't cast any spells or really do any like intentional magic, because I just felt like I didn't have the skill. And that really is the first hurdle to overcome if you struggle with this whole concept of visualization. Remembering that it doesn't always have to be visual, and figuring out how you specifically visualize in your mind. The second hurdle is one of perception. So when I read spell books, I rarely see someone write it out like, imagine a white light surrounding you. Usually you see visualize a white light surrounding you, and it might use more, you know, descriptive terms, but even when I'm doing this or a live show, if I catch myself saying imagine or, imagine yourself, I'm like, oh no, that's supposed to be visualize, because as soon as I catch myself saying imagine, I feel like I've cheapened that energy, or it's a little bit of a, oh shit. It's the same as saying it's not real. It's all in my head. And I definitely feel that sometimes when I use the word imagine there. And that's just because, we in our society, for some reason, have designated imagination as something really juvenile or unimportant and definitely not a serious spiritual pursuit. And that's really unfortunate because imagination is the absolute perfect word to use for this, where visualization is actually kind of sending the wrong message. When we hear visualization, we get all hung up on that word visual. It just gets stuck in our brains and we get stuck in a pattern where it has to be something visual. You might say, but Paige, wouldn't you say imagination has the same thing going on with the word image? And to that I say, well, that's touche, but hear me out here. Let's talk a little bit more about this word imagination. Word nerd. Imagination, it comes from Latin, as many of our words do. So the Latin verb imaginare, which is exactly like imaginary, but with an I on the end, and it's ari because it's Latin, which means to picture oneself. And that's it. There's no mention of whether or not the picture is accurate, or whether it's based on reality, or if it's based on what other people see. It's just to picture oneself. And then if you kind of keep looking at the word, you disregard the word image just for a second, and you'll see M-A-G-I, magi, which is not Latin. This is an old Persian word. In old Persia, the magi were a priestly caste. They were clergy people. They were associated with wisdom and sorcery and the supernatural and astrology. Magus was the individual, and then magi was the entire collective of people. And to me, when you look at it like that, it makes it pretty clear that imagination is the perfect term for this process we call visualization. We are magical people picturing ourselves achieving our goals, or wielding magic, or living the life that we want. Imagination is also something that when we were children was very easy to make real. Imaginations weren't just, these random pictures that didn't mean anything, that never materialized, just in our tiny little kid brain. They were our world, and for some of us, they were our friends, our imaginary friends. And they were the lens through which we perceived everything. And we've all grown, and how we perceive the world grows with us, right? But none of that was wrong. We were just young, and we were using a different part of our brains or consciousness, whatever, than we do as grown-ups. But imagination has always been something that, to me, is possible to bring into the real world. Because imagination isn't just a picture, it's anything. It's an experience. It's a whole story. And it's easy to bring in the real world, even when I'm just having, a daydream, a really intense daydream. I'm really going at it, imagining my perfect life here. And I'll have myself having such a vivid experience that I can, physically feel it here in the real world on a pretty regular basis. And you totally have to, trust me. So when I'm hungry or thirsty, if I think of something that I really, really want to eat or drink, oh man, I'll start to smell it. I can taste it in my mouth. I have the sensation of chewing it between my teeth, Oh my God. I might not even have it there with me. I might not even have a way to get it. But just that imaginary experience with that food sometimes it's a whole experience. And sometimes it's strong enough that I can even eat something different but still feel that satisfaction, like I'm eating that thing that I want, which is usually chocolate. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll force myself to have something that's not chocolate and is real food, and I'll still feel like, yeah, that could be chocolate. Just because I can, call up that feeling. And it's odd when you think about it. How does this happen? You start drooling and salivating, which I am right now, because I mentioned chocolate. How are you having a physical reaction to something if it's just not real, right? And it's because our imaginations have a lot more power than we initially give them credit for. If you can imagine a delicious, sweet, frosty, soft serve ice cream cone, the one that's vanilla and chocolate swirl, and then it's dipped in that hard chocolatey shell that's a little crumbly. So you have, ice cream dripping onto your fingers from that little cone that tastes like it's made of paper, and you're loudly slurping all of the melting ice cream out from like a crack in the chocolate near the bottom. And you don't even care how you look because all the people around you are doing the exact same thing. And you can practically feel your tongue hit that cool, delicious ice cream, and kind of like you need to wash your sticky hands. And I bet you all just went through that experience with me. So if you can do that, why can't you see and hear and feel a crackly white light surrounding you, or whatever it is that your spell wants you to do? It's just because you're trying too hard. And I hate that that's the answer, but it's true. This is something that we all do. We all visualize. We've all thought, I'd love to eat this thing right now. And then, you think about how to get that thing, and then gotten up and made that thing and ate it. And we've all felt so tired. You can practically feel yourself curling up in your amazingly warm, cushy, soft bed, even if you're sitting in an uncomfortable car seat. This is visualization. It's a pretty mundane and common thing that we all do all the time without realizing it. Now, I'm not going to say that imagining an ice cream cone and focusing your intention on, this big project or life goal, I'm not going to say that those are the exact same thing or the exact same energy. But think of it kind of like some of the other stuff that we do and don't realize, like breathing. We breathe just like a lot. I bet you're breathing right now. But you're just breathing. You're not focusing your breath or timing your breaths or taking, registered pauses in between. You're not pulling the air to specific parts of your body or doing some fancy yoga breathing. You're probably not doing any of that. Not unless you're currently engaged in an activity that directs you to intentionally change your breathing patterns. Because there is our regular breathing, the stuff that, you're doing right now. You better be breathing right now. Don't stop. And then there is breathing, right? So breathing exercises or patterns for specific purposes, like meditation, or, if you've had a kid and you've done Lamaze classes or, birthing classes, you use specific breathing patterns and all of that to help ease pain and make you feel calm and all of that kind of stuff. Likewise, there is your regular imagination, which is just kind of running in the background all the time. And then there are your intentional flights of imagination. These are things like your daydreams. You're controlling what's going on in this daydream. You're awake, right? But this is an intentional trip into your imagination. If you are a writer, when you're creating that character and you're pulling out all of the traits of your character from your mind, that is intentional imagination. If you're having a really, really hot sexual fantasy about that dude or that chick from the gym, or you're imagining, the sweetest, most perfect dog for you as you're on your way to the shelter to go adopt, these are all moments of intentional imagination, right? So let's go back to that first visualization hurdle I mentioned, the belief that a visualization has to be visual. When I was talking about the delicious soft serve ice cream cone earlier, can you tell I'm very excited for summer? I'm so excited. But when I was talking about the ice cream cone, I bet some of you could close your eyes and literally see the embarrassingly disgusting and delicious scene that I was describing, playing like a movie right on the inside of your eyelids. Maybe it had sound, or maybe it didn't. Maybe it was just the image. Maybe it was just a still photo. But it was there. What you might not realize, if you've always been able to do that, is not everyone can. A lot of people, a lot of you out there, when I was describing that, you couldn't see anything, but you could feel something. Like you could feel the heat from the sun on a hot summer day when you would be eating ice cream. You could maybe even feel the cold of the ice cream or the scratchiness of that gross papery cone. Some of you maybe heard that like slurping sound when the ice cream's starting to melt and you're trying to keep it on the cone. Or the ding of the cash register at the counter. Maybe you heard that stuff. Maybe you felt a feeling of just like satisfaction and enjoyment you get when you have a treat that you love, or you could feel it in your mouth when you're eating it. Stuff like that. Some people might experience all those things, and some people might only experience one or two of those things. There could even be reactions going on there that I don't know about. And the point that I'm spiraling towards is that all of that counts as visualization, which is why visualization can be kind of a misleading term. I personally believe that the ways that we imagine or visualize in magical situations, or any really, can be separated into the same categories that we use for psychic abilities. And I often think they're related in some way. I don't have proof, right? It's just, it's something I've kind of been keeping an eye on, and it's a theory of mine. There are lots of different classifications of psychic ability, right? And there's all sorts of things like medium and empath, but the main ones are what's called the clairs. So clairvoyant, which is clear or psychic sight. You have clairaudient, which is psychic hearing. Clairsentient, which is psychic feeling, like physical feeling. Claircognizant is psychic knowing. That sounds really neat. And then you even have cool stuff like clairalience, which is like psychic smelling. So there's a lot of them. So for example, people with clairvoyant abilities often have a more visually based memory and imagination. Not everyone who imagines that way is necessarily clairvoyant, by the way, but hey, you also could be and just don't know, so don't come at me. So my personal psychic abilities fall under the categories of claircognizance, which is, psychic knowing, being able to tell the truth from a lie, strong intuition, strong gut feeling. And clairsentience in that I get physical sensations from either psychic sources or physical objects. So, I can't see a ghost, but I can feel a ghost. And then all of a sudden I'll, in my brain, I'll just know a few details about that ghost. I'll know who or what the ghost is. And that's just, I don't know how I know that. I just do. I can tell little basic things like, oh, there's a new ghost here, and it's a man, and he's in his 40s, and I don't know what he wants. And that's all I get. Maybe I got to work on that more. When I am, daydreaming, wasting time. When I'm daydreaming in the middle of the day, I am a very serious daydreamer. I just love it. I love to, play out stories in my head, but I don't actually see pictures. It's not like watching a movie. It's more like I know the story and I'm telling it to myself. So sometimes I'll actually hear, reciting story. Sometimes it's the, the weird subtitles from nowhere. And I'll even have strong physical reactions. And some are really, really fun. Like, if I'm daydreaming about, oh my God, being at the beach, sometimes I can feel that sun heating up and practically burning my face. And some are not so fun. Like sometimes if I am daydreaming and something awful happens, which happens sometimes, I don't know why, I will start hysterically crying, and it will take me time to get over those feelings of sadness or grief that I got. Sometimes I also get an itchy or a burning feeling on my skin, and it's just, I just got to chill out. I really get the creepy crawlies and I get them a lot. I also smell smells and I'll hear sounds or music, but only for a split second. Like I smell the smell, I recognize it, and then the smell is gone. And my gut just goes, this is what that smell was. These are the things you remember or know about this smell. And I hope all of that makes sense to you or that I'm describing it well. It can be very hard to describe how your imagination works. To other people anyways. This took me like an embarrassingly long time to truly figure out, and I'm still figuring some of it out, even when I had a really great book helping me along the way. So don't feel bad if you've never even considered some of this stuff before, or if you gave up on visualization or anything. Just don't feel bad in general. But anyway, a lot of this info and, these theories of mine and my practices and stuff, these can be traced back to a book called Holistic Energy Magic, and I'll give you 3 guesses who wrote it. It's Tess Whitehurst. One of my faves. Just one of my absolute faves. And Holistic Energy Magic is criminally underrated. This book is great. It is like the definitive magical visualization for dummies manual. It's so good. The entire book is about working magic and spells without the use of physical tools, and instead developing your own psychic, invisible, spiritual toolkit, which is great. The very first chapter explains what I did earlier about how frequently we visualize and how we visualize. And from there, from that first chapter, it's like you're standing in a hallway of doors, and they've all been locked until this time. You can see that hallway, but all those doors are locked. And you pick up Holistic Energy Magic, and suddenly you've got the master key. All these things just start opening up. So she explains visualization and intention. She talks about connecting with the elements without using tools, even connecting to the energy of herbs and flowers and crystals when you don't physically have that herb or flower or crystal there with you. And the whole second half of the book is filled with spells and rituals, all that just use your own innate inner power of imagination to make magic happen. And that right there is what is really so important about mastering visualization and imagination. There's nothing wrong with the stuff, the witch stuff, the physical stuff. I love that stuff. You guys know I love the stuff. And I'm going to talk about actual crystals that you can hold in your hand real soon. But at a certain point, when you're always collecting all and making sure you have this stuff, at a certain point you have to wonder, am I actually magical, or is the stuff magical? And is that just me? Do I doubt my own abilities? Is that why I feel like I need this stuff? So to me, learning to cast magic and feel magic within myself and see real world changes without drawing energy from tools or stuff or feeling like I just don't have what I need, but just believing that I am innately magical enough to manifest what I want, that was a huge part of me really coming into my witchcraft and practice. If I hadn't figured that out, I might not still be practicing, because that was a huge problem for me. And for those of you who are secular witches, who don't worship gods, believing in yourself and in your own, access to magic or the magic that's inside you is vital. It's vital to your practice. And if you have the patience to practice and, you have the will, you can totally, attract that special lady without the jasmine flowers and the rose quartz all over the bed. Or you can find that perfect job without sewing up a poppet or a mojo bag that you might end up losing on the subway, whatever. Again, that's a real story. Likewise, when you do use the stuff, because we all do sometimes, there's still this element of imagination or visualization that really is the engine driving that spell. And so learning how to work with that can just, strengthen your entire spell casting experience. So as I said, I'm not a visual person. I really had to learn how to do all of this. So I have a pretty hot tip. Start by practicing, practice imagining and visualizing. If it helps you to think of it as imagining or daydreaming, just absolutely lean into it. But, but I want you to start with things you've already experienced with your non-psychic senses. I would pick something you've experienced multiple times. Something that is very memorable to you. One of my personal favorites is imagining that I'm sitting in front of a bonfire at night. And there's just so much about that scenario to feel and experience, right? I like a lot of different physical sensations because I feel those. So when I bring up a bonfire in my imagination, I can start to feel that heat on the front of my body, just the front of my legs and my face, but not on the back or my hair because it's away from the fire, right? It's nighttime back here and it's this beautiful, hot, burning fire right here. I can hear crackling and popping of the logs in the fire. I can smell the smoke, which I love that smell. And sometimes I can see that, that hot orange flame in my mind. I know what a flame looks like now. If I didn't know what a flame looked like, it would be very hard for me to just dream it up. But that feeling of the heat on the front of my body versus the cooler feeling on the back, that was really like a click moment with visualization for me. Even if I don't see or hear or smell anything, I can sit here, get real quiet, close my eyes, and focus on that experience of sitting in front of that bonfire, any bonfire. And I will feel my face and the front of my legs and my hands get nice and hot while my back stays cool. That's just the strongest physical sensation I associate with that scenario and experience because I'm a very, feely, tactile, slightly clairsentient person. So, and it can be anything that you like, right? It's something that you've done, something that you do all the time. When I lived in Vancouver many years before I learned any of this stuff, I actually used a visualization exercise that I don't even remember creating or anything. I didn't think about it. And I never really thought about it until years later. I was very homesick and I wanted to go home and I didn't feel like I belonged there. And the apartment that I live in now is the apartment that I lived in then. And I loved it. And I could close my eyes and say, okay, Paige, you're sitting on your bed in your bedroom. And I would basically just walk through the house and describe all the different parts, recognize the different parts of my apartment. And by the time I got, to the end, I almost never got to the end, but I was calmed right down. It was almost like in Jessica Jones where she repeats the street names of her old neighborhood. That's what I was doing with my old apartment. I was visualizing that I was there because it made me feel safe and it made me feel a lot better. It's much easier for me to visualize something like that is real, that I've touched and seen and smelled and experienced in real life. It's much easier for me to imagine that than something unreal or outrageous or complicated or something that I could never possibly experience. So with grounding, I could never get cool with that idea where I'm actually picturing roots growing out of my feet or my ass into the earth and into the ground. Never one time did I like that. I'm not a tree. I don't know what it's like to have roots that grow down into the earth. I don't know. I'm not a tree. I love trees, but I'm not a tree. What does it feel like to be grounded if you're not a tree that's literally anchored to one place? So instead, I connect with the planet through the elements via my imagination. I connect with fire in the way I described above. And then for water, I'll imagine, standing in the lake and feeling the clay or the sand under my feet and the water around my thighs and the smell of that. I say fresh water, but it's really fish water and that, that deep sense of calm that I always feel when I get into manageable water like that. I don't like super deep water, shallowy water. But I instantly feel at peace, right? And I'll call up those feelings and that memory. For air, I'll recall a super windy day, which I like, and we get a lot of them here. Or driving real fast with the windows open down a country road. You can hear the whooshing sound of the wind and not much else. You feel a cool feeling on the skin and the hair whipping around your face. And I can always smell the grass in the fields and the green stuff that we're passing on the road. And for earth, I'll literally stop and I'll plant my feet really good. And I will feel that actual solid surface underneath me. I'll hear the creak of the wood floors, or if I'm outside, I'll feel that grass sticking up between my toes. And I can recall how great it has always felt to walk barefoot on the earth, or to, get my solid footing after a difficult time. All of this is much easier for me to visualize. It's all much easier for me to visualize because all of that stuff exists in my imagination. And the ways that I visualize, which are not visual, can relate more and work better with stuff that I understand. I don't have to think about what it might feel like because I know what it would feel like and I can just dive right in. I don't know if that will help you guys, but but that helps me a lot, and it's still better than any other grounding exercise that I've tried. When you're first learning, you can even practice with one tiny little object. So if you want, you can grab a thing, just anything from around you. What do I have? It's a little perfume bottle. It's Britney Spears Fantasy. It's the one in the red bottle, not Midnight Fantasy, which is objectively better, but it's Fantasy. So, you've got a thing. Now hold the thing, smell the thing, run your fingers over it, see if it has any textures. Just memorize every single detail of whatever that little thing is that you're holding. And then put it down and just clear it out of your mind. Maybe think of something else for a few minutes. Don't look at the thing. Now, try to imagine that thing now. What's going on? Do you see that little red round glass bottle in your hands? Or maybe you can just smell the perfume. Maybe you can feel your fingers gliding over the little jewels that are, spread around the bottle. Maybe you hear the perfume sloshing around in there. Do this with a bunch of things and figure out exactly how your imagination comes through and what details you can grab onto to analyze whatever it is that you're visualizing. And before you know it, you will be a pro, even before you get to the end of Holistic Energy Magic by Tess Whitehurst, which I'm sure you're already purchasing online. So I hope that answers a lot of the questions that people have had about visualization. I hope my own views and my experiences here about imagination can help you connect to your inner power much more easily and really infuse all of those spells that you cast with your own truly authentic intention. There's no wrong way to visualize your goals, of course, just like there's no wrong way to cast a spell. Do not be afraid to adapt the rules of magical practice to fit your life and your personality and your soul, even if that makes it look very different from other people's idea of magic and magical practice. I hope that helps. This is actually kind of a fun topic. Like I said, I really struggled with visualization, and since figuring it out, so when did I read this? 2015? I think that's the year it even came out. Yes, first edition, first printing, 2015. I'm a nerd. Since then, my spell work has been much better. It's easier for me to figure out what kind of spell I want because I'm better at reading, those visualizations, that imagination, figuring out what my ideas are and planning them out a little bit more. So I hope that helps you guys too. Now, if you're ready, let's have a little bit of fun with some magic rocks. So I really enjoyed talking about magic rocks from outer space in that Star Goddess episode. That was a really fun episode in general, and it was just such a fun way to kind of bring all that energy together and give you some tools to start working with that vibe. And so I got a similar idea when I was writing this episode and thinking about imagination and magic. For as long as there's been civilization, there have been human beings that tell stories of the perfect civilization, the utopia, the mystical land of magic, or the super advanced civilization that sunk into the sea or, was destroyed by its own hubris or a volcano or some shit. So many stories feature average people in times all throughout the stretch of time, average people stumbling into these very mythic, mystical lands and hoping to find treasure or power or something shitty and greedy. But instead, they usually leave with a different perspective on humanity and on themselves, of course. So these places like Atlantis and Lemuria, El Dorado, the Isle of Avalon, all of these places really fit our interpretation today of imaginary perfectly. They're places of great magic with human origins, but no proof whether or not they actually existed in our physical world. The experiences of these places, they hold up a mirror to humanity and show us our power and our flaws. The stuff that's innate in the human condition, the condition of civilization, of society. So I'm going to talk about some crystals that are related to some of these places. And the crystals I'm talking about, they're all real. Like, that's them. I'm rubbing them together. You can actually get these from stores. And then the associated stories are purely imaginary, which is what makes them so totally magical, of course. So let's start with a magical place, an imaginary place that I'm sure many of you are familiar with, which is Atlantis. Atlantis was a mythical, magical, old school civilization, existed somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean. I think that's like the best guess. And what happened is Atlantis sunk into the sea. So the story of Atlantis is an old one, but it does directly trace back to ancient Greek mythology. Plato was the first one to ever talk about Atlantis. And he describes Atlantis as this incredibly advanced civilization with technology and magic and lots of different wisdom. And the people of Atlantis began to believe that they were superior to everybody else and that they should be in charge. They tried to take over the world, and their hubris got the attention of the gods, who were absolutely not impressed, and sunk the whole damn place. From there, Atlantis, the story, the place, all of it grew and changed and warped. And Atlantis is now an imaginary mythical land that still exists underneath the sea because of that advanced technology, magical technology of the original peoples that lived there. So even if you can't find Atlantis, which, I mean, if you do, hit me up, there is a stone called Atlantisite. It's one of my absolute favorites. It's a combination of stitchite and serpentine. And what you have is this yellowy green color that you get from I believe that's the stitchite or the serpentine, whatever. So you get this yellowy green color with spots of purple. And it's vibrant purple. So it's purple and it's bright green. It's my two favorite colors. Some people think it looks heinous. That's what I like about it. It connects with your solar plexus chakra, which is the chakra where you feel joy and happiness and excitement. And it's related to the Leo zodiac sign, which is the sign of the sun, because it is seen as a stone of enlightenment and inner fire, and it's got this very, very hot energy. You can use Atlantisite to tap into your imagination. Atlantisite can help you tap into your own imagination or connect you with ancient wisdom, ancient worlds. Maybe you can discover something about Atlantis specifically. If you're working within your own past lives, Atlantisite can help you connect and go further back and absorb what it is that you experience there. It helps you overcome insecurity and have confidence. And in one of my books, it said it helps you find your strength after you've been a victim of a situation. It helps you regain that inner strength, that inner fire. So Atlanticite is very, very great for advancing your own self, your own growth, your solar plexus, which is your confidence and your excitement, and connecting you with the past in a way that you can absorb and learn from to make yourself stronger. So beautiful. Atlanticite. Similar to Atlantis, we have the story of Lemuria, which is, I'm telling you, it's the same story, but just on the Pacific Ocean instead. So Lemuria, again, was this very ancient, very advanced civilization that had incredible technology and access to magic and all sorts of stuff like that. Very beautiful, wonderful, exciting. The Lemurians, rather than getting screwed over by the gods, because of their advanced technology and their wisdom, they were able to learn that Lemuria was going to sink or be destroyed. They knew that it wouldn't be there for much longer. So to preserve all of the things that they had learned, all of the advancements that they made, all of their technology, all of their knowledge, all of their communications with the other beings that existed on this planet when it was Pangea, possibly aliens and things like that, they used quartz crystals to create basically like little data banks. And they put the quartz crystals in a big, what is my word? Crystal grid throughout the world, or South America, where they're from. And now you can find crystals that are said to be Lemurian quartz. They're called Lemurian seed crystals. And they look like, at first glance, they look like just kind of a smoky quartz point. But when you look a little bit closer, you see these straight across lines that look just, really unusual. Just really unusual. And it's said that the crystals themselves house this ancient knowledge of Lemuria, and by holding the crystals or using the crystals, you can tap into that. So it's a form of quartz, like I said, and it resonates with your crown chakra, of course, your spiritual chakra, and the chakra of wisdom. And it's related to the zodiac sign Aquarius, which is the very rebellious and different and kind of quixotic planet. So Lemuria can help you connect to lost civilizations, like the lost civilization of Lemuria, but any ancient or lost civilizations can be contacted using the information you can gain from these Lemurian seed crystals, apparently. It's an excellent healer. A lot of Reiki practitioners love their Lemurian crystals, and usually the ones they get are nice and big and they have a pinkish tone to them. Mine is a little bit of a smoky color, but I still really like it. I do want one of those big, big ones though. So it helps with healing, with easing pain. It's said to be really great for easing trauma and the anxiety associated with that. It offers strength to caregivers who are caring for other people, either in their jobs or in their regular lives. It helps increase your feelings of charity and peace and community and your connection with your global community. So if you run or you work a charity, or if you're working to fundraise for good causes, having a Lemurian seed crystal to help, amplify that energy and bring in all of these good blessings and small miracles, which is another thing associated with Lemurian crystals, and spirituality and protection and healing, that can only help your cause, right? So like I said, you can connect to ancient civilizations, ancient wisdom. This is another crystal you can use if you want to connect with galactic or cosmic beings, right? If you want to connect with the aliens, you don't necessarily need space rocks. You might need something that's a little bit more earthly, but still just as imaginary and magical. This one's really great for meditation. Lemurian crystal has a very strong vibe. I don't know if you'll feel anything. I don't necessarily, but I just I don't feel it in my body, but I kind of feel it in the solar plexus. Like I feel it in my gut a little bit when I'm holding it. These next two have very similar names and they relate to a very similar imaginary place, but they're very different stones. So what we have is merlinite and mystic merlinite. Yay. So let's start with merlinite, which is white with little black inclusions. It's like a dendritic agate. Yeah, I think that's what I mean. So it's a white stone. This is associated with your crown chakra, opening that up and connecting it with your third eye. And it's associated with the zodiac sign of Scorpio, which is a very deep and spiritual sign. So merlinite can be used to heal old wounds and healing old energy blockages, stuff that doesn't need to be there. So it can help you clear that stuff out. It can help you let go of difficult things like that. It can work deep healing. It's very associated with the brain and the brain stem and those very deep parts of your brain where you need to stimulate for fun stuff like creativity, right? It helps drive away confusion and help you access wisdom. Helps with courage. It can help ease the pain of a difficult work environment. It's very good at earth healing and eco-friendly causes. Again, if you're fundraising or participating in charity, this is something that can help you help the planet, connect with the planet. It's also associated with magic and alchemy. Of course, that's why it's called merlinite. And magical knowledge, wisdom, breaking the hold of someone who uses magic and spirituality to manipulate. Merlin is someone that most people recognize by name. He was the wizard or the mage, the magus, in the Arthurian legends, Camelot and the Round Table and the knights and everything. And Merlin was the wizard, the druid, the priest of the story. And Merlin came from the mystical Isle of Avalon, which is where all of these magical beings and things kind of came from. So not just Merlin, but the fairies and the witches and the goddess worshippers are all associated with Merlin and with this mystical Isle of Avalon that doesn't exist in our reality space, right? Avalon means the Isle of Apples, and it's said to have a large apple tree of life. There's lots of biblical stories associated with Avalon, which is neat. It's an island that means, it's an imaginary place that means very much to pagans and witches, especially those who are into Celtic and European stories and legends and gods. So it's very significant for them. And there are very significant biblical ties to Avalon and Glastonbury Tor and the Holy Grail. I actually talked about a lot of that stuff in my most recent episode of Seeker's Corner that you guys can check out. I talked all about magical travel and magical places and stuff, right? So merlinite and even mystic merlinite, which I'm about to describe, both of these help you connect to that kind of energy. Avalon was said to be the Isle of knowledge of magic. It's the place where you go to learn it, to practice it. And it's also a very highly spiritual. So not everyone goes to the Isle of Avalon to learn magic, right? This is where priestesses and priests go to learn. So that is a very strong, again, ancient and spiritual connection. So mystic merlinite looks very different. Mystic merlinite is actually a completely different stone. It's a stone called indigo gabbro, which isn't a bad name, but mystic merlinite sounds more fun. Indigo gabbro is an indigo color. It's a dark blue, sometimes a little bit of purple with black swirls in it. It's a very, very beautiful stone. I like this one quite a bit more than the merlinite, although they're both great. So this one more works with your brow, your third eye chakra versus your crown, but also your root chakra. It kind of, links them together. Makes sure that both are working at the same speed, which is what you need. So mystic merlinite can help with past life recall. It can help you build your psychic ability and your self-awareness. If you are working with past lives and the Akashic records, it can help you retrieve things from there. So if there are stories or experiences or soul fragments that you need to retrieve in order to fulfill your soul's purpose, Mystic Merlinite can help you grab hold of that stuff. It can help you commune with nature spirits, with any of those magical beings that are associated with Arthurian legends and Avalon. So fairies, the fairy kingdom, spirits, magical gods and goddesses, and magical beings from times gone past to Merlin himself. It also helps dig up and release deep emotional patterns. I think that's very much connected to its ability to retrieve things in past life situations. It does that in our regular life as well. And it helps you connect with your soul's purpose, what it is you're really here to do, and then to actually make the most of it. So they're both very different. While Merlinite is a little bit more about, Merlinite seems like it does more with your mind, with this plane, whereas Mystic Merlinite really brings in that mystic, it's magical. So Merlinite is really great for healing you and your energetic and your etheric bodies, whereas Mystic Merlinite really helps you kind of harness that stuff. The next one I have is not actually a stone. You'll have to forgive me. I didn't find a million stones for this, but I really wanted to include this because I think it's important. And that is gold. Gold is not a stone, but metals have magical associations as well. So gold, the reason I chose this is because of the land of El Dorado. The city of El Dorado was the city of gold. It was it was said to have unimaginable amounts of gold and treasure and riches. And for a long time, especially like Spanish conquistadors, they looked all over for this mystical city of El Dorado to try to take the gold. And it became a very serious story about greed and what we're willing to trample and destroy to get these kind of arbitrary connections to physical manifestation, to money, to currency, to properties, whatever. El Dorado's from a long ass time ago. So they didn't have dollars specifically. So working with gold, not only does it, I like to include gold in my money magic. There we go. My money magic. But always with the caveat that I remember what's truly important. Remember that money, that metal, it's just a hunk of metal. That's not the be-all, end-all of what I need from this. That's just one step in the process. That's an important thing to remember when you're working money magic, or at least it is to me. So I like to use gold in that way. It's also really great for all of those fiery solar plexus Leo qualities that I was talking about with the Atlanticite. So you have your self-confidence, helping with mental illness, helping with courage, helping to stand up for yourself. It attracts money and prosperity. It encourages growth, and it helps channel the energy of stones. That's one of the reasons rings and bracelets and stuff that are set with gold, with stones, or silver with stones, why that's such a great way to work with that magic is because you have this metal conductive, this energy conductor. And it also offers protection from the evil eye, from jealousy, from people who want to steal. So the message of gold in El Dorado is to remember not to get so wrapped up in the material needs or wants that you fail to see how special and magical the things around you are. So those are some very fun magic rocks and metals that you guys can use to work very real magic with this idea of imagination. All of these stones help increase your imagination and help you connect to your authentic wants and needs and help you connect to who you really are and bring that out to the surface. And that's really what manifestation and visualization and imagination is all about. Okay, that was everything that I had for you guys today. I hope you enjoy my little treatise here on imagination. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. And and for those of you who have struggled with visualization or struggled with feeling like you have the ability to find out what your goals really are and see you having that. That's so important. If you've ever felt like you struggled with that, I hope some of these ideas helped you. Holistic Energy Magic by Tess Whitehurst is really great and really explains the concept in a way that makes so much sense. Everything clicked for me when I read that, when she pointed out how much visualization I do on my regular day, the regular visualization versus the magical stuff. I also read a book called Are You Psychic or Making It Up by Lynn Carroll, which is really great. And it's about, telling the difference between experiencing psychic phenomena or when something's wrong, how to connect with other people who are psychic, how to connect with other people who are not psychic without feeling like a crazy person, and that kind of stuff. And I found that to be really fun. It's fun and helpful. I found a digital version on hoopladigital.com, which works with my library card. So if you guys want to learn more about me, about the Fat Feminist Witch, or find more about these topics, you can go to my website at thefatfeministwitch.com. I also do a live show on Facebook on Fridays, usually every other Friday. And you can find all the information for that on my Facebook page, The Fat Feminist Witch. Secrets Corner is a really fun show where I pick a topic and people send in questions about this topic or send in ideas. And then I build the show around that on Friday. It's supposed to be a half-hour show. Lately, they all go past an hour because I also take live questions. So if you guys are interested, you can check that out on my Facebook page for more information. If you like the podcast and you would like to see it continue, you can donate to, you can donate to the podcast, to me, by going to my website and clicking the Buy Me a Coffee option. That's just a one-time little donation. If you want to support the podcast financially on a regular basis, you can also go to patreon.com/thefatfeministwitch and join the Witch and Bitch, which is my private membership group. We work in 2-month cycles where we read a magical book and we discuss a certain magical topic that has an overarching theme. So in this current cycle, we're talking about authenticity and self-expression. And I hope you can see some of the evidence of that work I've been doing with them in this episode, because the conversations I have with these Witch and Bitch members very much offer inspiration for all of the episodes that I do. You can find me all across social media. If there's ever a topic that you think I should cover, or if you have a question, if you want to be on the show, if you if you think you would be a great guest on the Fat Feminist Witch podcast, feel free to email me at fatfeministwitch@gmail.com. You can also tweet at me. I love Twitter, and I use Twitter a lot, so you can also find me on Twitter and talk to me there. Thank you so much for listening today to Visualization and Imagination. I hope you have a very wonderful and exciting and imaginative weekend. I'm so funny. June starts on Saturday. We are at the very end of May. It's almost summertime, people, and I'm very excited. Hope you all have a really great weekend, and I will catch you all on the next episode of the Fat Feminist Witch Podcast.